Esta pregunta realmente es muy corta, Daniel, y tiene que ver está relacionada con los paneles 5 a 7 de la exposición. En ellos, el hall intermedio de las casas presentadas activa e intensifica las relaciones con los espacios perimetrales. Permanece su valor potencial, mas no se relaciona con ningún aspecto del estilo. Neil, ¿qué opinión tienes sobre el impacto espacial del hall intermedio en estas casas a partir de su representación y análisis gráfico? Y añadiría en muchas de ellas, y los ejemplos elegidos para esta pregunta, excepto uno, las demás tienen solamente un hall de una altura sencilla, no el doble espacio. Tienes la palabra, Neil, para la respuesta corta.
The thing about a single height hall to me is that it's not, in the manner of Penshurst, it's not a double height space such as the medieval halls always were. And I think it is reduced, I think that in being reduced down to a single height space, it loses that, that quality, that idea of being a focal point within a larger complex of buildings. It becomes really no more than a circulation space, albeit a wide circulation space. And doesn't respond to the notion of the middle hall. That's my interpretation.
En esta intervención me gustaría presentar brevemente la casa para Víctor Chayo en Bogotá, exhibida en el panel 6, diseñada por el arquitecto italiano Bruno Violi en 1948, uno de los ejemplos que hemos considerado como interpretación moderna del hall intermedio. Esta casa de 2 plantas se implanta en un amplio predio rectangular de esquina de manera semiaislada. La configuración volumétrica obedece a un cubo cubierto por 2 bóvedas que abarcan 2 crujías, con un bloque de menor dimensión adosado en el costado occidental. En el volumen principal hay una crujía que actúa como eje central en donde se ubica el gran hall de doble altura. Este hall se relaciona en sentido longitudinal con el comedor, proyectándose hacia el patio posterior, y en el sentido transversal con espacios de estudio, biblioteca y con el salón. Todas estas zonas se relacionan además con un patio interior que ilumina y extiende la espacialidad del hall hacia una de las crujías laterales a través de un plano acristalado, también de doble altura, que se enfrenta con las esbeltas pero magistrales escaleras. Este patio puede ser recorrido en todo su perímetro y crea una integración espacial y visual de todas las estancias sociales, otorgando aún más la representatividad al hall. El vacío interior del hall, sumado con el del patio y las escaleras, permite crear relaciones espaciales y visuales con las estancias de la segunda planta, destinadas a unas zonas de mayor intimidad.
En mi comentario pretendo valorar la capacidad que tienen algunos ejemplos particulares, estos tanto de las casas que obedecen al modelo del hall como las que incluyen el patio, y referirlo a este asunto que ha salido otras veces de la capacidad o menos de estos tipos arquitectónicos de construir según una idea de ciudad, ¿no? El panel 7, que es un complemento de los paneles 8 y 9, analizan precisamente aspectos concretos y particulares de la riqueza de unas obras que son todas obras de autor y que por sus caracteres podrían tener un valor general, algunas de ellas, dentro de aquella hipótesis alternativa que formulé cuando ayer me referí a la teoría de Ludwig Hilbersheimer sobre la ciudad entendida como combinación entre edificación baja y edificación alta. El día anterior en interpretaciones me refería a la Casa Bermúdez, un bellísimo caso ilustrativo de lo que plantea la pregunta. Se sirve del hall intermedio, pero en ella no hay ningún rastro de lenguaje del estilo neotudor, ni nada parecido. Esta casa ejemplifica cómo se podrían disponer casas con hall intermedio en hilera, formando calles urbanas compuestas por townhouses con patio trasero ajardinado. Como complemento, las casas tanto de Obregón y Valenzuela como de otros autores, son casas en recinto, podrían formar un tapiz de patios ajardinados. Aquí ilustramos la casa Prieto de Ricaurte, Carrizosa y Prieto como ejemplo. Es un caso de casa en recinto de gran riqueza espacial y doméstica, donde ese rico mundo interior no se corresponde voluntariamente con la modestia de la única fachada que se ve desde la calle. Las dos tradiciones, por un lado las casas agrupadas con hall estructurador y por otro las casas recinto con patios y porches, que evocan la herencia colonial española, sin referencias lingüísticas, podrían nutrir el programa de casas bajas para construir una Bogotá semejante al experimento del Lafayette Park de Hilbersheimer, Mies y Caldwell en Detroit, pero eso nunca llegó a ocurrir.
Neil, again, my question is really aimed at your broader expertise as a historian of mid-century houses. The house that you'll see in the slides that appear on the screen alongside me, which is called the Casa Hernando Santos, this is a house which has got a house from the early 1960s, which has got a series of great hall-like elements within a space which is in other respects a modern space. It has got, for example, a raised platform at the end. It has screens. It has a double height. It has, I think, probably most relevantly to this discussion, it has behind that raised platform, you can see it now, the stairs lead off it. It has an entrance way through to the more private parts of the private areas of the house. In many respects, it is, even if it is doing it in an abstract way or in a conceptual way, it is taking some of those elements from the middle hall and applying them to a completely different type of house. I wondered whether you could tell us how, in your experience, the architects of the houses that you have studied, I'm thinking of the Californian ones, how they have been able to turn what are essentially in many cases simple entrance ways into areas which carry more architectural weight because of the way in which they have some reminiscence, conscious or not, of the elements of great halls. Just before you came on to join us, Neil, I showed the rest of the panel the cover of your Peter Wormersley book. You have there a double height house. You don't have a raised dais. You have a lowered part, in fact, for the dining hall. But I know that this is an area in which you have a great deal of interest. And I wondered if you could tell us how you saw the connections between the mid-century houses and the traditional patterns of hall houses.
I think the memory, if that's the right way of putting it, the memory of the middle hall in modern architecture is really a rather fascinating idea. Whether it comes from the English medieval buildings or not, I couldn't really say, but I would probably look back to Le Corbusier's Maison Citroën, for instance. The double height spaces there, his La Roche-Jeanneret house, which I mentioned earlier, although I couldn't remember the complete name, the La Roche-Jeanneret house in Paris with the triple height space. That way of exploding space is very much characteristic of the early 20th century. And the round plan also, which came from Austria, is another way of looking at it. The sort of architecture I have studied in post-war years, such as Peter Wormersley, which has just been mentioned. He was an English architect living in Scotland, but the house on the cover of my book was in Yorkshire in England, a house he built for his brother. Buildings such as that, and exactly contemporaneous buildings in California, all as part of the Case Study House program, do, I think, respond very well to the images that you have in your exhibition, in this section of the exhibition. The California buildings tend to be single-story houses, but having said that, perhaps the most important of the case study houses published through Arts and Architecture magazine, the Eames House in Pacific Palisades of 1949, is a double height space. The main living space is a double height space. And another one that came rather later by one of the case study house architects, Pierre Koenig, is the house he built for himself in about 1985 in Brentwood in Los Angeles. And that has a triple height space in the center. But both the Eames House and the Koenig House, when one approaches the double height or triple height space, one approaches it through a much more compressed entrance area, a small corridor, a passageway, something like that. And then the space explodes as one goes into it, and you look up. And in the case of the Koenig House, you look up again because the ceiling is much, much higher. And I think that is what one sees here, possibly in the Hernando Santos house, which I think is really rather fascinating. I don't want to comment on the brickwork, but just to say that this strikes me as a rather Japanese way of finishing a building on the outside, not a particularly European way. The Casa Jose Prieto, 1957, to me that's straight out of the California Case Study House program, and the integration of garden space within the house, the perspective drawing that is on your panel, brick walls or solid walls of some sort on either side, opening into a landscape beyond, a large fireplace, its canopy suspended from the ceiling, the framework of the house extending again out into the landscape, so you're never quite sure whether you're inside or outside. There's an ambiguity there. If I'm within the frame of the house, surely I'm in the building, but there's no roof, so maybe I'm outside the building. These questions are sent to challenge us. And again, moving through the panels, another one which came up in the discussion just now, the Casa Roberto Pradilla. Again, that's a building which I think fits into this modernist way of thinking quite clearly, and the processional stairs coming down, which was something that Alan Powers mentioned yesterday, the way that the hostess might come down once she's ready to receive her guests, who are all standing at the bottom, chatting, holding glasses of champagne or whatever it is. The Gabriel Hernandez house, again, something that could be part of the California Case Study House program, a fabulous perspective drawing showing indoor and outdoor space once more. Reminds me very much of Rafael Soriano or Pierre Koenig, who were building just this sort of stuff at this time. That's 1953. So I think what we have here is very much modern architecture, but one can only relate it tangentially back to hall houses. It's gone through so many washes since the middle hall of the medieval buildings that we actually get a very different type of architecture. And I don't mean stylistically, but I mean in terms of its expression of space and its relationship to the outdoors. I think that's all I need, or all I want to say on that.